Writers, I love the way that you're bringing out the hearts of your stories. Some of you are stretching out the heart of your story by telling step by step what happened. Others are adding the internal story. Many of you are doing both. Carl, a former student, knew that he wanted to write about his first checker game. So he made a tiny sketch in the corner of his paper to remind him that was the topic for that page. He could have written, "My opponent and I sat down and began to play." Instead, what Carl did was he transported himself back to that moment, the moment that felt the most important. This was the heart of his story, and he placed a little heart in that spot to help him remember that. Then he played the movie in his mind of what happened at the very start of that checkers game, and then he told the story as if he was right there doing it all over again. Listen while I read it to you. At my first game of checkers, I sat down on my chair. I was getting ready for my match. I took a deep breath. I rubbed my hands together. Then I had my eyes glued to my opponent, like I was going to murder him. He sat down with me. We started to shake hands to one another. I said, "May the best man win." My opponent had a strange smile on his face. Many of you, like Carl, are taking the time to relive the moments you're writing about, and that's great for your writing. Today I want to remind you that writers are always working on more than one thing. While you are finding and stretching out the heart of your story, you also need to keep an awareness in your mind that paragraphing matters, just like spelling and punctuation. Words can be like books. I bet you agree with me when I tell you that every inch of a bookshelf space is crammed with books, and you can't see how they're organized. It's hard to appreciate any of them. We pass them by. On the other hand, if they're organized nicely, like in a bookstore or even here in our classroom, and there's special groupings, each one of these groups is set carefully with space around it. It's easier to put the books in to decide which ones to read. Writers, we need to make sure people's eyes don't fly right past our words and our ideas like they fly past books when they're crammed too close together with no organization. Today, as you edit your drafts, I want to teach you that there are a few places where writers typically begin new paragraphs. Keeping these places in mind can help us know when to start a new paragraph. Some of those typical places are when there's a new subtopic, when time has moved forward, and when a new person is speaking. So let's take a look at another student's story, Abraham. And I can show you what I mean. Abraham is writing a story about his cat, Ginger. As he was revising his draft, he realized that his story had different sections in it, almost like different chapters. Listen closely and think about what you would do if you were Abraham. This is what he'd written. Ginger stretched out on the carpet and yawned. I scratched behind her ears, and she leaned her head into my hand. She purred. My mom was in the kitchen baking cookies. She was singing a Spanish song. She always sings when she's in the kitchen. Think about what you notice, writers. Abraham realized that his piece really had two parts. One about his cat, one about his mom. Abraham was really smart because when he saw he had two topics, he paused and he thought, if I have two topics, does this mean I have two stories? Or do they really fit together into one small moment, but just not in one paragraph? In this instance, he decided they belong in the same story because they are both parts of a longer story about Ginger eating one of his mom's chocolate chip cookies and getting sick. So I will teach you how you can add a special code to show a subtopic where a new paragraph begins. On Abraham's next draft, he will start a new line. He will begin the first sentence of the new paragraph with a space away from his last line. This will give us as readers a chance to get ready for a part that's a little bit new or a little bit different. So Abraham's story, the need for a new paragraph came from a new subtopic. But remember, sometimes the need for a new paragraph comes because time has moved forward. Sometimes it comes when a new person is speaking.